Hello, everybody. This is Peter and Sylvia. We are back. Sylvia has got her coffee, and I've got
I have.
mine of a now very well-worn mug that I bought about 23 years ago, I think. And it's been in use every single day since. So it's slightly falling apart. But falling apart is not what we're talking about today. But something, there was a time when we were taught to think positive. Positivity is good, negativity is bad. That's what we've been taught all the time, that you have positive emotions and you have negative emotions. That's the standard teaching. So we decided that we would talk about this today and start by something that you may have heard of already, which is called toxic positivity. We know that negativity can be quite toxic, especially in the workplace, but also in other relationships. But what is toxic positivity?
Mhm.
Well, for me, it is when you insist on being positive, insist on putting a positive spin on absolutely everything, because it ignores the rest of what life is about.
Mhm.
So we shouldn't be sinking into constant negativity either, because that's not healthy and it's probably a sign that something is wrong. But if everything is just rosary and lovely and positive all the time, I think we've gone to the opposite extreme. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Sylvia.
Isn't it a very interesting topic? And my thoughts around that as you were speaking is I can give like a personal experience of this. We were talking just before we came on air, where I, at the moment, of having a bit of a spell where I think I shared with you, Peter, that I feel like my batteries are really low.
Hmm.
And I'm normally pretty good at maintaining my own self-care, resilience, bounce back ability, all that type of stuff. But I think what's happened over the last few months, there's been quite a few things that have been happening. And my natural way is to always look for the positive and always, that wasn't so good, but this is great. Um, this is not going very well, but let's put a positive spin on it. And I'm doing it consciously because that's the way I am and all those type of things. But I think there is also an element, picking up on your point about toxic positivity, if we are always putting a positive spin on it without consciously being aware that we are. I think what's happened to me is, and I always say this to clients and people that I talk with and to, by always doing that, sometimes we can deny what's really going on for us and deny our own feelings. For example, yes, there's been this spell of things happening. And for me, it's been, well, that wasn't so good, but let's look at this. And this was great and that was great. But there have been also been days when I've literally gone hands up, that was rubbish. We'll try again tomorrow. Rather than trying to put a positive spin on something that's really isn't great. So I think there is an element, if we're always putting that positive spin on all the time without consciously being aware that we are, it can sometimes build that we're not aware of what's going on. Sports psychologists are great for this. That wasn't great, even better if. That wasn't great. And you hear a lot of sports people always talking about that wasn't so good, but this is marvelous. Yeah, we'll look at that, we'll look at this, we'll revisit that and revisit that. Sometimes I think it's beneficial to just go, actually, that wasn't good, you know, end, period, full stop. And then look at it again separately another time. So that's like an example of what you're talking there. If I was continuously putting a positive spin on that, denying my own feelings could actually build up over a period of time and have to your point, a toxic effect on my mental health and well-being and my physiological state.
And I think if we keep talking about positive all the time, or we
Mm,
think about negative all the time, we are talking about two extremes, and in life, the extremes usually don't work.
mm,
So if we only put a positive spin on everything, we are actually denying ourselves to experience and to realize that there's an awful lot of gray and beige in between those two extremes. Of course,
yeah,
things can be very positive, they can be very negative at times, but it's
Mm,
not a permanent state of affairs.
mm,
Our permanent state of affairs is pretty run-of-the-mill and not particularly interesting.
mm,
In most of our lives, we have a lot of routine that we just go through without even thinking about it. So it's only when something happens that we desperately try to figure out, what do I think about this?
mm,
I have a lot of clients who want, for example, anger management, because we've been told and taught that anger is a negative thing, it's a
mm,
bad emotion. Well, I'm saying, well, we have to think about our emotions and figure out, is this my friend or is this my enemy in this
mm,
particular instance?
mhm,
Because you can take your anger and convert that into energy and take action to fix something.
mhm,
And if you're just deliriously happy about something, that can be quite destructive as well.
mhm,
Because you forget everything else about you and you drop appointments and you forget this and you forget that. But also, again, that can be a driver to take action and do something in a constructive way.
mhm. And it's
So,
interesting too, to your point about always looking for the positives. You know, we looking for them. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? As opposed to, that wasn't good, let's do this better. Always looking to put the positive spin on something. And rather than, actually, that wasn't so good, let's do again, we'll try again tomorrow. And I think this constantly looking and constantly putting a positive spin, finding the positive, expressing, articulating the positive, can actually be very tiring.
Mhm.
Um,
Can be.
yeah, I think it can be tiring because we're always looking for that, almost to make it better, to make it acceptable, to make it comfortable, to make it okay. Always looking for, oh, that wasn't as good. But I don't want to appear negative. This is a lot of people. I don't want to appear negative. So let's always put the positive, and that's tiring for the brain and the mind to keep doing that.
It is tiring, but positive people are more motivating to be around.
Yes,
Positivity is motivational.
yes.
So we shouldn't then go again and do the opposite and say, well, let's not worry about thinking about finding the positive
Mm,
because it's just a waste of time, it's tiring. That's
mm,
not what you're saying.
no.
But I think what has happened with the toxic positivity is that when we first learn to do something, we often end up overdoing it
Mm,
until we get to the point where we figure out where the right balance is for us.
mm,
So maybe some of the toxic positivity is coming from people who have learned to think positive thoughts and see the
mm,
best and the positive in situations.
mm,
And then they do it too well. And then
mm,
it becomes skewed in the other direction, which is just
mm,
as unhealthy as being stuck in the negative position.
mm. No, I think that's a great point because they're always looking for that positive. You know, we're not saying not do it. And I think sometimes people can always look for the positive and put the positivity on it. But in their quiet moments, their reflective moments, instead of going, actually, it isn't going to plan, continuing with that, putting a brave face on almost to a degree, putting that positive spin on something, you know, emphasis on spin. Is it actually true, or is it just trying to, you know, tip into that, as you say, you know, that toxic area where it can actually tip? And the word you said earlier suddenly sprung to mind, is balance. It's about balance, you know, when we put the positive on it and not allowing it to then tip into becoming quite toxic. And a lot of it, I guess, as I'm talking, it's around our own self-awareness of ourselves and what we are doing and how we are behaving and how we are
Mm.
communicating, and our self-talk and the tone of our self-talk in terms of our positive spins in our own heads.
And in our own heads is exactly the operating term here, I think, because where is the negativity? Where is the positivity?
Mm,
Some of it is in the real world, for
yep.
sure. And some of it, or maybe a lot of it, is our own internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm,
We're talking to ourselves all the time. And
mm-hmm,
if we haven't got anyone to talk to, we tend to go around in circles and make things worse or bigger, so more negative or more positive, until we, as I usually say, look out the window into the real world and see what's actually going on there.
Mhm.
But, putting a positive spin on things, it doesn't mean that necessarily that we put it into the extreme.
Mm.
As an example, I have a client who's job hunting at the moment, and she told me that she had completely messed up a job interview. So we looked at it, and the answer was, yeah, you did mess it up. Okay, it wasn't a great performance.
Mm.
Now, what can we do with that and turn it into a really positive spin? You say, oh, but the next one would be fantastic.
Mm.
Great stuff that you went for this interview because the next one would be fantastic. So what we didn't do was that.
Mm.
What we did do instead was, okay, you messed up there, and there because you had the feedback from the interview. So what can you learn from that?
Mhm.
And that is not putting a positive spin on it, that's putting a realistic spin on it.
Mhm.
She had feedback, now she can do things differently.
Mm.
So that next time she will make a better interview.
Mm.
Because it's about learning how to do job interviews. It's not something we just inherently know how to do. We have to learn and go through probably a couple of disastrous ones before we get better at it. So
I
we,
think,
we
go
we
on.
didn't go to the positive angle. We went sort of down the middle of the road to find out what can we do with this that is realistic.
Mm. I think what struck me there as well is like when I've been talking about putting a positive spin on something, it's almost like we're overlooking what actually didn't go well. And to your point there, you acknowledged that wasn't your best performance.
Hmm.
End of.
Yeah.
But then what can we do differently?
Mhm.
So that it's the acknowledgement, as what I was saying earlier, it's not to deny that that wasn't a great performance. The acknowledgement it wasn't a great performance. Then it's what can we do about it? The positivity, what can we do differently next time?
Yeah.
And there's a big difference from, as you said, oh, don't worry, that was all right, but what we can do next time, you acknowledged it wasn't great. Next step, well, how do we learn? What do we do differently? And there's a very big difference for me in acknowledging it rather than overlooking it and putting a positive spin on something and trying to deny what actually happened.
Mm. And of course, looking at what can you do different next time
Mm.
also includes, well, what actually did you do well in that interview?
Mm.
Because you
Yeah.
need to bring that along to the next interview as
Mm.
well. So yes, we do learn from our mistakes, but we
Mm.
should not forget our successes either, because
Mm.
we need both in order to stay on that difficult place, which is the middle of the road.
Mm. And I think there is where this thing about putting a positive spin is looking at, okay, that wasn't your best performance, but what did you do well in that performance? So there's an acknowledgement, but also looking at what the positives were and taking those forwards as opposed to just completely ignoring it wasn't great to start with.
And where we left it was she is now better prepared for the next interview, positive,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still very acutely aware that the job hunting situation in general is a difficult place to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all of a sudden heaven on earth that
Mm.
you're job hunting,
Mm. Mm.
but we can improve the performance and then gradually get to that place where she is the one who gets the job.
Mm. No, it's interesting, isn't it? How and what struck me is like the rugby at the weekend. This positive spin. Some of the performances weren't good, but there's no acknowledgement that it wasn't good. It's, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. Perhaps behind the scenes, it's hands up, that was X, Y, and Z, but it's acknowledging what actually happened, and then
Mm.
what do we do differently, and how can we improve at the same time? What were the positives of it? And the positive could simply be acknowledging that it wasn't great and what do we need to improve. But always putting the positivity on it can always, as I said earlier, deny what's really going on. And that's when sometimes I think it can tip into becoming quite toxic in how we approach these situations.
And the final comment I want to make on this is if we try to paint everything positive,
Mm.
you actually lose the ability to acknowledge and realize when things are actually positive
Mm. Mm.
and get the rush from that wonderful warm and fuzzy feeling when something is going well.
Mm.
So on that note, I think we should hand it over to our viewers to come back with lots of comments about their thoughts on toxic positivity.
Yes, be interesting to hear.
So thanks for watching, and we shall see you shortly. Take care.
See you later. Bye bye.